Nonprofits feeling the squeeze. Are there better ways for charitable groups to manage their resources? Joining us for this week's Smith Business Close-Up is Raghavan, Professor of Management Science. Sir, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Is it possible that nonprofits just don't do as good a job as for-profit industries at this?
I think maybe don't do a good enough job is perhaps a strong word, but I think nonprofits can perhaps do more in these difficult times in trying to allocate their resources towards projects that they are interested in.
So how should nonprofits decide how best to allocate resources?
Okay. There's sort of a short story and a longer story. The short story is that nonprofits need to think strategically in terms of their mission, in terms of the kinds of projects that they would like to be involved in, and think about their strategic priorities. They also need to think about ways in which they can measure their impact in projects that they do, and to use that in making their decisions on how to allocate their dollars or their resources towards projects. So I think that's sort of the short story. The longer story is once they've done that, we can use quantitative decision-making models to help them actually build mathematical models as an aid in making these decisions.
So does that mean that the nonprofits tend to be somewhat less rigorous in measuring results, setting up standards for performance? Do they tend to just see a need and try to address it?
Yes, I guess I would agree with you. I think nonprofits, people who are driven to nonprofits are very committed in what they do. They really want to help people and sort of help the organization that they work with. But they don't necessarily come with the training and the tools, the managerial tools in terms of thinking about these decisions. And so sometimes there isn't measurement in terms of the metrics, and sometimes decisions are made more in a subjective manner than sort of in a structured and organized manner after a period of strategic thinking.
I understand you've been working with Catholic Relief Services. What can you tell us about that?
This was actually a project we did 4 to 5 years ago. It was a project that involved, at that time, a MBA student, a former MBA student. His name is Richard Neidl, and a doctoral student, Yanis Gamros. Both have since graduated from Smith. It's a great example of how we actually work together with our students on outside projects. In this particular case, Catholic Relief Services, actually based in Baltimore, they work in about 90 different countries, have about 4,000 different people, and they had about annually about $70 million of what they call unrestricted funds. So these are things that people give to them in good faith to do good things, and they have to decide on how to allocate this money to different countries around the world. In the work that we did with them, they had been doing this annually, and there was sort of a feeling within the organization that they needed some more a more quantitative method, a more strategic method to think about how they'd been allocating their funds. But their decision-making earlier was more, there was a lot of discussions involved, there's a lot of talking between groups of people. And then at the end, people often felt that perhaps they could have done better in terms of how they allocated this $70 million of annual, approximately $70 million of annual funding.
So if I can interrupt for a second, what was learned from that? And in a few seconds, what's perhaps applicable to other organizations?
Okay. So I think what we learned from that was they had a set of stated strategic priorities. So I'll give you a couple of quick examples. They wanted to work in countries to try and reduce the prevalence of HIV and AIDS. They wanted to improve education for young women and minorities. And so we helped them develop metrics to measure that for different countries that they worked in, measure the impact in terms of, for example, how much of the dollars that are allocated to a country were actually, how much of it went into development, and use that to decide the resource allocation process for the next year. And the part of this involved developing a spreadsheet-based model once they've determined their strategic priorities to help do this allocation.
All right, Dr. Raghavan joining us from the Smith School. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Pleasure talking to you.